This presentation looks at strategies to reduce cheating in online exams. So the outline of this presentation will look at 4 different areas where you can try to reduce cheating going on in your online classes. These areas are course design, some quick and easy tips in Canvas, some more intensive Canvas solutions, This presentation looks at strategies to reduce cheating in online exams. So the outline of this presentation is that we'll look at several different areas where you can make strides as a professor to try and increase your exam security. The first is course design. Then there are some very quick and easy Canvas tools you can use. Then there are some more intensive Canvas solutions that require a little bit more work on your part. And then there's a few external tools the university provides that you can also use. The best strategy is to mix ideas from several different of these categories together. The more you use, the more secure your exam will be. There's also a worksheet available on the Faculty Development Center website that has working links that you can use to explore these 21 different strategies that we're going to look at today. So starting with course design, the big thing to remember is that students cheat in in-person courses too. As a librarian here at this institution, I've actually had students come up to the information desk in the library and ask me for scissors to cut out those little tiny cheat sheets that they bring with them to class and try and slip past you. So it's not just students and online courses. In fact, a study showed by Vail that perceptions of cheating in online courses are actually higher among instructors who have never taught online. Instructors who've already taught online once think that they're about the same. Cheating can have many forms in both in-person and online settings and can include submitting another's work as one's own, texting or messaging another student while taking the quiz, or receiving answers from a student in another section who's already taken the exam. So those are all things to think about when you're putting together an exam. The second aspect of course design, particularly in an online setting, is that you kind of need to treat all exams as open book. There are some strategies that we can use to try and restrict this, and we'll talk about those later. But for the most part, know that you have less control, obviously, outside of the classroom than you do inside the classroom about what your students are looking at. So when you're thinking about online testing, look at tip number 3 and start thinking about how you can design both your course and your assessments to de-emphasize recalling facts and more about emphasizing applying knowledge and how that might play out in an exam. So you can make some true, false, multiple choice, and matching questions with essay or short answer questions. Varble kind of noted that answering correctly a remember question predominantly depends on being able to recall or look up the answer. Answering correctly to other types of questions characteristically depends on analyzing, assembling, constructing, or in applying to arrive at an answer, and thus looking up the answer is more difficult, if not impossible. So if you can come up with questions that clearly ask students to choose the best answer or choose the correct answer based on different aspects rather than just recalling something, you will have a better assessment tool. Essay questions can also make it difficult for students to cheat on a traditional assessment because students know that the instructor may recognize an answer that's been copied or may run it through Google or Turnitin or something like that in order to check it. One thing to note here is if you use essay or short answer questions, the first time you give a quiz, particularly in fall semester when we have some maybe new students on campus, you likely will need to explain to students why their grade is initially so low. Canvas, as you know, grades all of the questions they can, the multiple choice, the essay, that don't require any kind of instructor intervention. But if you have a 20-point quiz and 10 of those points are an essay, then it's going to look like they might have failed the quiz because you simply haven't graded the essay yet. So you might want to, after that first exam or before that first exam, remind students that this requires your intervention, and if they go in and look at that score immediately, it's going to look really low before you have graded them yourself. Another tip in the area of course design is actually about having more quizzes and fewer long exams. This is called frequent low-stakes testing. And this works particularly well in online courses for a couple of different reasons. A, students have less incentive to cheat when the stakes are so low. So, for example, if instead of having two 100-point exams, a midterm and a final, that are worth 200 total points, you could have two 50-point midterm and final, and then 10 quizzes kind of interspersed through the rest of the semester that are 10 points each. So when they see all those little quizzes, they are going to spend less time on them. In fact, you can give them less time. You can give them a 10-point quiz or a 10-question quiz and give them 10 or 15 minutes to do it. That makes it harder for them to have time to look up answers. And like I said, when there are so few points on the table, they're a little bit less likely to try and cheat to get them. Another thing that these long-term or these low-stakes testing opportunities provide is that it gives them frequent feedback, and that can be motivational to them. It creates a dialogue between teacher and student so that they have a better sense of where their grade is throughout the semester, and perhaps reduces the number of those "how am I doing" emails that you get. It also can build student confidence because there are more opportunities for them to succeed. And it can increase motivation to do work in the course and possibly prevent procrastination. If you've taught online before, you might have had students who didn't try and do any of the work until like week 12, and that can be usually a recipe for disaster. So the frequent feedback really can help increase that dialogue between you and them, build student confidence, and prevent those kind of disastrous procrastinations that we sometimes see. You also should try on your syllabus to be very upfront with students about any of your quiz or exam policies, such as the fact that you'll be using time limits or answer locking, or you're going to record them during the exam, or you're going to have to require them to download a tool we'll talk about later, Respondus Lockdown Browser. If you can, include all of that stuff in your syllabus, and be prepared to talk about it right before you give your first quiz or exam. A good idea to think about is to have a quiz very early in your course that kind of uses these restrictions that you're going to put on. That way students can learn how Canvas quizzes operate. This is especially important in fall semester courses in classes that have large numbers of freshmen who maybe haven't seen Canvas before. So if you do that, you can try and use the different types of questions you might use in a quiz typically, as well as these other strategies. A great option for doing this is to have a quiz over your syllabus with a wide variety of question types. Another option is to adjust your course grading policies to emphasize assignments that are less susceptible to cheating, such as group projects and writing assignments. We use Turnitin here at Murray State University in Canvas, and it allows you to have all students submit their work through the Turnitin database, and it checks for plagiarism and writing assignments. Know that Turnitin does flag false positives, so it is not a foolproof tool or a guarantee of plagiarism. But it is definitely an option for you. And if you have more of these type of projects, you might be able to get away from having quite as many exams if you're worried about their security. So moving on to some of the quick and easy Canvas tools. For tip number 7, one thing you can do is have students read and type out an academic dishonesty warning that summarizes the consequences before their first and final exams. Now, some schools have tried using honor codes, but research has not shown them to be as effective as these warnings. And there is a little bit of concern that something like this could wear off over time as a strategy. Let me show you what this might look like, though. So, an honor code statement would be basically when you click on the Start Quiz below, you agree to honor the pledge. On my honor, as a UC Boulder student, I have neither given nor received unauthorized assistance on this work. Now, a warning statement based on MSU's own academic honesty policy might look more at Murray State defines cheating and you can read all of that. And then having the student kind of type a response that says, this is the consequences as I understand it. Not copying and pasting, but putting it into their own words. So that would be kind of a warning statement that you could put in up front, maybe as a first question on a quiz. So some more Canvas tools, shuffling the answer choices for each question. This is under quiz options in Canvas. And like I said, we'll provide links to all of this stuff that you can see. One thing to keep in mind if you do this is frequently on paper exams we'll use the words all of these or none of these for a question with multiple answers. Well, if you are doing a shuffling, obviously all of these or all of the above would not make sense, nor would none of the above. So you have to use those other phrases in order to show that. You can also set a time limit for the test so that students really have to get done in a very short period of time. This is also under quiz options when you create a quiz in Canvas. One thing to keep in mind here, though, is that time limits can more heavily penalize international students. So if you have a lot of international students in your program, you might want to think about a different way to do this. On the other side, you can actually individualize time limits, which is especially important for students with disabilities who need accommodation or extra test-taking time. You could do that for international students too, if you felt like it. The individualized time limits have to be done only after the quiz is published and is accomplished using the moderate this quiz function, but it is not available on the quiz options menu until after the quiz is made available to students. Another option is to use the display one question at a time. This prevents students from seeing everything in a quiz. This is especially good as a strategy if you have a quiz with more than 5 questions. You can also lock questions after answering to prevent students from backtracking so that they'll see that first question and they'll move on, and if they realize later that there was something else they wanted to add, they can't go back and change it. So that is another opportunity for you to kind of prevent those kind of things, especially if they are messaging or chatting with someone else who is taking the quiz as well. That prevents them from changing those answers. You can allow students to view their results only once or for a very short window of time. This is also under quiz options. Or you can release the students' test scores, or you should never release the students' test score until after the availability time has ended. So don't let the students who do things first be able to share their results or what they learned with other students who are maybe procrastinators. And make sure that you have not released the results until every student has taken the exam and you've graded them. Both 13 and 14 rely on the function for mute assignment, which is a feature in the Canvas gradebook that I use all the time and love. And like I said, that's a link that we can look at. So that's kind of the end of the short tips that are really easy. Most of those come under quiz options. So here's some instructor-intensive Canvas tools. Tip number 15 includes creating a question bank from which to select questions for each test. From there, Canvas uses something else called question groups. So a bank is a question, like for your first exam, let's say maybe your midterm exam, you create a pool of let's say 50 questions. But some of them are equivalent and you don't want every student to see the same question. So what will happen then is you can create question groups. So you can say, hey, these are 3 questions about the causes of the American Revolution. I want each student to get one of these 3 questions. So in all, if you had 3 questions each, 50-question exam, you could theoretically come up with a completely different exam for each student. So there's a lot more about question banks and question groups available on the Canvas help site that you can use to learn a little bit more about these things. Question banks can also be used in question groups to randomize the order of the questions on the test. So if you wanted to have students get things in a different order, you would create question groups, and that would allow you to change those up. However, there is no way the order of groups can be manipulated. So if you have all the American Revolution causes questions first and all of the American Revolution heroes questions last in a group, that will be the same for every student. There's no way you can say to have, oh, for this student, get heroes first and causes last. So that's kind of one of the limitations of Canvas, but the question groups are still a really useful tool. Another one is to update exam questions each semester and delete out certain exams and then add some new questions. Now, obviously, you don't have to completely recreate the exam every semester, but one easy way to do this in class is consider having students create 5 or 10 questions as a pre-exam study prep activity and then share them with you. You can adapt or modify the best questions to add to the bank for the following semester. So definitely try and get some student help on how you can add some additional test questions. Another tool that is available is to have students do more essay responses, but have them record a video response to your question. This requires them to have a webcam, so you would definitely want to state this up front in your syllabus. There's no good directions on Canvas help sites to do that, but the Faculty Development Center is here to help you with it, and I have instructions that I will post online that you can see how to do this. One great thing about this is, of course, you can require students to do it. You'll see them talking, so you can definitely tell they're not looking at notes when they're doing it. So that brings us to our last 3 tips, which have to do with a couple of external tools. Now, one option is Proctors, where you have students take an exam in a room that's monitored by somebody. You can have the proctor check the ID of each student prior to the start of the exam, similar to what we do with like SAT questions in high school. The stance on proctoring here at Murray State varies by college. For example, the College of Business has an unwritten policy that it doesn't require proctoring. But that does differ, and so you should definitely talk to your chair or college to see how they feel about the idea of proctoring. It can also, if you use large testing centers, like if you have students who are online and away from here, there can be a fee associated with that, so that can add to the cost of the student's education. So definitely another reason to think very carefully about choosing to proctor. We have a tool called Respondus Lockdown Browser, which, if downloaded onto a computer, prevents students from going on to any additional outside websites. They're basically only limited to using Canvas and taking that test. It will require students to download software or take exam in a campus lab that has Respondus already downloaded on its machine. Students will get a message with a link to download if they try to take the quiz and aren't on a machine that's approved. TSCS handles training for Respondus products and can help you with setting up an exam that would use Lockdown Browser. You have to enable it in Canvas as an instructor, but it can prevent students from printing, copying, and going to another website or accessing other applications during an assessment. So, for example, in settings, under course details and navigation, there's an option to enable Lockdown Browser. Then you drag it into the menu in course navigation under maybe modules or assignments. Then you have to click on the link for Lockdown Browser in that side menu, and it will show you a list of all your quizzes. And then there's a menu that will allow you to enable Lockdown Browser for each exam or quiz. There is a video that kind of shows how to use Lockdown Browser for Canvas, and I will include that on the website so that you can see how that works. Another tool that we have is something called Respondus Monitor. Now, this is a little bit different because it records a student with a webcam during an online test. So if you don't want to proctor, but you want to be able to see what your students are doing if they're not looking at a phone or looking at notes or looking at their book, this is what you can do. This is also a way to require proof of identity before taking a test to make sure that students aren't paying another student to take the test for them. So you can have them hold up their ID and show it to you so you can see if it matches. These exams are stored for immediate review for up to a year, and then with delayed review for several years. So basically you could tell Respondus if there was a grade discrepancy or dispute, you could, and it was 2 years ago from a course, you could have them download that and email it to you so you could review the whole thing. Especially with Respondus Monitor and Lockdown Browser, one suggestion for best practice that they have is to keep a practice quiz open throughout the semester so that students can make sure their computer or device is compatible before every exam or quiz. So basically, create that quiz, allow unlimited attempts, and then every time that will tell them whether or not they're on a device with Lockdown Browser, and they can make sure it works before they start. It will save you and the students a few headaches in the end. There is a tool, a video that also kind of explains what Respondus Monitor does that I'll link to for you as well. So those are just a few of the strategies, 21 of them in fact, that you can use to try and reduce the impact of cheating in your online assessments. And there will be links to all of these references if you want to read more about them online later. Thank you for listening.